There is a parking lot off Highway 385 in the Black Hills of South Dakota. On a Saturday morning in late August, it holds maybe 40 cars. Families unload coolers. A couple studies the posted trail map. A ranger waves from the station window. Everything about the scene is ordinary, the kind of ordinary that makes a place feel safe. That makes you stop checking your surroundings and start enjoying them instead. Somewhere on the trail ahead, a hiker has stopped walking. They are looking up at a branch about 15 feet off the ground. Sitting on that branch is an owl. It is mid. The owl is not moving. They take a photograph. They note in a text to a friend that the owl seemed unbothered, that it watched them. They keep walking. That owl has a name in the Lakota language. It has a name in Dene Bizod, the language of the Navajo people. It has a name in the language of the Muscogee Creek Nation. 3 nations, 3 languages, separated by hundreds, sometimes more than 1,000 miles of geography. And in all 3 naming traditions, across all 3 bodies of oral law that predate any written record of this continent, the name given to an owl behaving in that way carries the same instruction: do not follow. Not do not be afraid, not treat it with caution. The instruction in all 3 traditions is a complete prohibition: do not follow. Do not continue in the direction it is watching. Do not return to that place. What we are about to go through is not folklore. It is not a collection of myths assembled to frighten. What we are going through is a record, a documented pattern of tribal instruction, specific enough to have survived centuries of oral transmission unchanged, consistent enough across unconnected nations that its consistency demands examination, and recent enough that what you are about to hear is still being reported. The parking lot on Highway 385 is still there. The trail map is still posted. The branch where the owl sat is still there too, whether or not anyone is looking at it right now. Before we go through these cases, understand something about the structure of tribal warning systems. They were not constructed the way we construct cautionary tales today, with moral conclusions attached, with explanations that make the warning feel resolved. Tribal oral law is behavioral law. It tells you what to do. It does not always tell you why. The why is embedded in the instruction itself, in the specificity of it, in the conditions that trigger it, in the fact that it survived long enough to reach the present day unchanged. When the Lakota describe a Shichawambli, a bad eagle, a corrupted bird, they are not describing a species. They are describing a behavior. When the Navajos speak of an owl that has become a vessel, a carrier, they specify where it sits when it appears, and what it does with its attention. When the Muscogee Creek elders issued warnings about birds that appear on the homeward path and not the outward one, they meant something that required no elaboration among people who understood the land. 3 nations: the Lakota of the northern Great Plains, the Navajo of the Four Corners region, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, the Muscogee Creek of the southeastern woodlands. Their original territory, spanning what is now Alabama and Georgia before forced removal, pushed the nation into Oklahoma. These are not neighboring peoples. They do not share a parent language. Their spiritual and legal traditions developed independently, across separate landscapes, across thousands of years. And yet the warning is the same animal, the same behavior, the same instruction. There are explanations that scientists and anthropologists have offered for this kind of cross-cultural convergence, that different peoples observing the same animal in the same ecological role would arrive at similar conclusions. That owls are nocturnal and silent and appear where other animals do not, and that a pattern recognizing human mind would naturally assign significance to that. These are reasonable explanations. They do not account for the specificity. Any naturalist will tell you that an owl sitting still in daylight is not unusual. It is common. Owls roost, they rest, they sit. The warnings do not describe a roosting owl. They describe something more particular than that. And they describe it in the same way. In a moment, we will go through 5 cases. The 5th is still active. It happened within the last 3 years. In a wilderness area that sits inside territory recognized by 2 of these 3 nations. No agency has issued a formal explanation. The tribal officer who documented it gave the same instruction the elders gave. He did not add anything to it. Before that 5th case, one thing. The incident that closes this came from a preserve that federal agencies have flagged twice for what their reports call anomalous search and rescue. Patterns. The preserve has a name. The tribal nation that stewarded that land for centuries has a different name for it. We will get to both. Stay with this. The Black Hills of South Dakota sit within the territory of the Ouachita, the 7 Council Fires. The people collectively known today as the Sioux Nation, and more specifically here, the Lakota. The Black Hills are Paha Sapa, the heart of everything that is. They are not metaphorically sacred. They are legally sacred under treaty, and practically sacred in a way that does not require any legal recognition to be real. The Lakota oral tradition carries warnings about specific behaviors in specific locations within the Black Hills. One of those warnings concerns what happens when a person encounters an owl on a trail above a certain elevation, the ridge country, the high pine country, where the land breaks and opens into views that go for miles. The warning is not to leave immediately. The warning is to stop, to note which direction the owl is facing, and to go back the way you came. Not an alternate route, back the way you came. The distinction matters, and we will return to it. In the late summer of 1987, 2 hikers set out from a trailhead in the northern Black Hills, an area outside Deadwood, on terrain that had seen limited foot traffic. They were experienced, they had maps. They were backcountry hikers, not weekend tourists. They planned a 3-day loop. On the 2nd day, according to what a third party who spoke with them the night before later reported, they had encountered a large owl on a low branch near the ridge. One of the hikers had photographed it. They had remarked on how unusual it was, midday, unmoving, watching them as they passed. They did not come back on the 3rd day. The search began on day 4. It lasted 11 days. One hiker was found on day 5 in a ravine approximately 4 miles from where the owl encounter had been placed. He was alive. He was treated for exposure and dehydration. When he was interviewed, he was unable to give a coherent account of the days between the owl's sighting and his recovery. He did not remember crossing the terrain that separated those 2 points. He did not know how he had gotten into the ravine. He was not injured in any way consistent with a fall. His partner was not found, not on day 11. Not after. The search was suspended and later reclassified. The case file lists the outcome as an open missing persons report. It has not been closed. The Lakota do not say that the owl takes people. The instruction is not framed that way. The instruction is, when you see this, you are at the edge of something. You do not know which side of the edge you are on. You turn around. The hiker who was found did not know which side he had been on either. He never gave another interview. He moved out of the region within the year. A local paper ran a brief follow-up. He did not respond to their request for comment. The other hiker's name is still in the database, still listed as open. The Chuska Mountains run along the border of New Mexico and Arizona. They sit inside the Navajo Nation, the homeland, and they are among the more remote ranges in the Four Corners region. Elevation runs above 9,000 feet in places. The terrain is piñon and ponderosa, broken by steep canyon systems that orient themselves in directions that can be disorienting even with instruments. The Navajo understanding of owls is complex and has been written about extensively, often imprecisely, by outside scholars. What matters here is not the theological framework. What matters is the behavioral instruction that emerges from it. In Navajo tradition, an owl seen twice in the same location, the same tree, the same post, the same rock, within a single journey, is a signal that something has already gone wrong in that place. Not that something might go wrong, that it already has. The instruction is to not continue in any direction until a ceremony of clearing has been performed by a hadala, a ceremonial practitioner, who knows the specific protocols. Federal land agencies do not schedule their survey timelines around Navajo ceremonial protocols. In the spring of 2003, a federal survey team, 4 people contracted to assess erosion patterns along a drainage corridor in the Chuskas, entered the area over 2 days of field work. On the first day, one member of the team photographed an owl on a dead juniper at the mouth of a side canyon. On the second morning, returning to the same drainage, the same owl, or an owl indistinguishable from it, was on the same branch. Same position, same tree. The team noted it in their field log as a curiosity. They continued their survey. They did not complete the survey that day. The team became separated in the early afternoon, a detail that experienced field surveyors, working with GPS equipment and in radio contact, should not be able to explain. 2 members emerged from a different canyon mouth than they had entered, at a point roughly 6 miles from their recorded position. They did not know how they had traversed that distance. Their GPS logs showed them stationary at the mouth of the side canyon where the owl had been for the entire 4-hour period they could not account for. The other 2 members came out the following morning. They had camped. They had made a decision, independently and without communication, to stop moving when it began to get dark. They came out calm. They did not have an explanation either. The Federal Survey report notes the incident under the heading of equipment anomaly and recommends recalibration of GPS units. The GPS units were checked. There was nothing wrong with them. A Navajo Nation liaison who reviewed the incident at the request of a regional environmental organization said only that the survey team had been given the appropriate instruction before entering the area and had not followed it. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. Here is the detail that connects all 3 nations. It is not that owls appear in their warning traditions. Owls appear in dozens of indigenous traditions across the continent, in varied and sometimes contradictory ways, as messengers, as protectors, as ill omens, as guides. The presence of the owl in a warning tradition is not unusual. What is unusual is this: the behavior that triggers the warning in the Lakota tradition, the Navajo tradition, and the Muscogee Creek tradition is not the owl's presence. It is the owl's position relative to the traveler's direction of movement. The Lakota warning is triggered by an owl seen facing in the direction you are heading, not behind you, not to the side. Ahead of you, in your path. The Navajo warning activates when the owl is seen twice in the same location, on the outward journey, and then again on the return. It has not moved, it has not hunted. It has not left, it is still there when you come back. The Muscogee Creek warning, the one that survived forced removal, that traveled from Alabama to Oklahoma, that is documented in oral histories collected in the early 20th century and reaffirmed in interviews conducted in the 1990s, concerns an owl, seen specifically and only on the return path, not when going out. When coming home, on the trail you already walked that was clear when you walked it, there is now an owl that was not there before, sitting still, watching the direction you have come from. 3 different nations, 3 different ecological zones: northern plains, high desert, southeastern woodland. 3 different triggers, and in all 3 cases, the thing being described is an owl that is oriented toward the path of the person who will be harmed. Not a roosting owl, not a sleeping owl. Not an owl behaving as owls behave. An owl that is watching where you are going or where you have been. Or the space between those 2 things. There is no clean scientific explanation for why 3 separate peoples, developing warning systems in isolation from each other, would identify the same directional behavior as a threshold marker. Convergence can explain the animal, it cannot explain the orientation. That detail does not arise from general observation. It arises from something that happened repeatedly, consistently, in ways specific enough to encode in all 3 territories. The elders did not explain it further. The instruction was sufficient. They had seen what happened to people who needed the explanation. The Ouachita National Forest covers nearly 2 million acres across western Arkansas and southeastern Oklahoma. It is the oldest national forest in the South. Its terrain is mixed hardwood and pine, with a ridge and valley structure that runs east to west, unusual for the region, geologically distinct. A landscape that does not behave the way hikers trained in other forests expect it to behave. The Ouachita sits within and adjacent to territory historically occupied and contested by multiple nations: the Caddo, the Choctaw, the Cherokee after removal, and in the western Oklahoma sections, the Muscogee Creek. It is not land with a single tribal custodian. It is land that multiple peoples understood in different ways as a place requiring particular attention. In October of 2019, a solo backpacker set out on a 6-day route through the Ouachita. He was not a novice. He had completed long-distance routes in 3 other states. He kept a detailed trail journal, handwritten, consistent. The kind of log that experienced solo hikers maintain as both record and safety practice. He checked in by satellite communicator on day 1, day 2, and the morning of day 3. His day 3 entry, written the evening before his check-in, describes an owl on a stump at the edge of his campsite. He notes it with the same mild curiosity that the Federal Survey team had shown 6 years earlier. He describes it as the same owl or its twin, language that suggests he had seen it before. Reading the entry in context, you find the first sighting on the morning of day 2, a large owl, same species, on a stump near the trail junction where he had turned to head deeper into the ridgeline country. Same stump. Morning of day 2, heading in. Evening of day 3, camped. He writes, "It doesn't move when I approach, just watches. I got within 8 feet, took some pictures. Seemed content to let me pass. Heading back that direction tomorrow, so I'll see if it's still there." He did not check in on day 4. The search began on day 5. It was extensive, drone assets, ground teams. The satellite communicator was pinged and returned a location fix. The location was accurate. He was there. He was found on day 7 at his day 3 campsite in his tent, alone, with no memory of days 4 through 7. His trail journal does not have entries for those days. The pages are there. They are blank. The photographs on his camera, he carried a dedicated camera. Not just his phone, go up through the evening of day 3. The owl photograph is there. The owl is on the stump. The stump is at the edge of the camp. The owl is facing in the direction he had come from, the direction back to the trailhead. The lead ranger on the search filed an incident report. It notes the satellite communicator location match, the condition of the hiker on recovery, the blank journal pages. It notes the photographs were reviewed. The original incident report describes the owl photograph as consistent with a great horned owl, stationary, facing northwest. Northwest is the direction of the trailhead. Approximately 3 weeks later, the report was amended. The amendment removes the reference to the photograph entirely. No explanation for the amendment is given in the file. The ranger who filed it retired from the Forest Service the following spring. The hiker gave one interview to a regional outdoor recreation magazine. He said he did not remember the 4 days. He said he was not injured. He said he went back to the photograph of the owl and looked at it for a long time, and then he deleted it. He was asked if he would hike the Ouachita again. He did not answer immediately. Then he said no. He did not say why. In 2022, a regional conservation organization published a long-form audio interview with a wildlife officer from the Navajo Nation. The interview was conducted in English and focused primarily on human-wildlife conflict, bears, mountain lions, the corridor pressures that come from development pushing into traditional territorial ranges. Near the end of the interview, the officer was asked about what kinds of non-emergency calls his office received most frequently. He paused before answering. Then he said that the most common non-emergency call his office now handles, more common than bear sightings, more common than mountain lion reports, more common than any other wildlife observation, is calls about owls, specifically stationary owls near trailheads, owls that people have photographed, owls that are still there when they come back, owls that are facing the trail. He was asked what advice he gives to the people who call. He said, "We tell them not to continue. We tell them to turn around and go back the way they came. We tell them not to go back to that trail, not that day." The interviewer asked whether people follow that advice. The officer said that some do. He said that the ones who do not tend to call back. He was asked what he means by that. He said they call back because something happened, or someone calls on their behalf. He did not specify further. The interviewer did not push. He was asked whether he has a scientific explanation for why owls in this specific behavioral configuration appear to be associated with adverse outcomes. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said that his grandfather gave him the instruction when he was young. He said the instruction was not accompanied by an explanation. He said he had thought about asking for one when he was older and thought explanations were something that could be demanded. He said he no longer thinks that. He said the instruction is, you do not know what is on the other side of this moment. You turn around. He said his grandfather said it exactly that way. He said he says it exactly the same way now. The interview was posted and is still available. It has fewer than 3,000 views. There is a parking lot off Highway 385 in the Black Hills of South Dakota. You may have been there. You may have a photograph taken there, or near there, or somewhere very much like it, a trailhead in National Forest land, a posted map, a ranger station visible from the lot. The kind of place where you feel the particular safety of a well-maintained federal recreation area. The kind of safety that comes from signage and cell service, and the knowledge that other people are nearby. The Lakota have a name for the land those trails cross. They have had it longer than the trails have existed. Longer than the highway has existed. The names do not belong to the parking lot or the posted map. They belong to the terrain underneath all of it, the ridgelines, the creek drainages, the high country where the pines thin and the wind is constant, and you can see for long distances in every direction except one. Somewhere in a national forest in your state, and if you live in the continental United States, you are within a day's drive of land that was stewarded by one of these 3 nations, or by a nation with its own version of this instruction, somewhere on that land. A trail runs through terrain that has a name in a language older than any map that shows it. The families in the parking lot are packing up. It is late afternoon now. The light is going golden the way it does in the last 2 hours before dark. That particular quality of light that makes everything look safe and beautiful and worth photographing. Someone is checking the trail map one more time. Someone is lacing their boots. Somewhere on the trail between here and where they are going. Or between where they are going and here, on the return path. On the trail they already walked this morning. The trail they know there may be a branch, there may be a stump. There may be a low rock at the edge of the path. You cannot know if it is there. You cannot know if it is watching the direction you have come from, or the direction you are heading. You cannot know because you have not been told what to look for. Not by anyone who knew. 3 nations knew. They encoded it. They passed it through centuries without losing the specific detail that makes it a warning rather than a story. They did not need you to believe it. They needed the people who lived on that land to survive it. The owl on the branch in the photograph, the one taken at midday in August by the hiker on Highway 385. The one sent in a text with the note that it seemed unbothered. That it watched them. That photograph is still on someone's phone. The owl in it is not moving. It is facing the trail.